Last on the agenda, but they're not the least important on that agenda. So I want to take this time, first of all, to introduce myself. I'm Gene Garcia. I'm a member of the committee from the National Academy of Science. And we have several panelists here today that I will introduce in a minute. First, I just want to point out the idea of convening this panel was to provide information to the committee and to the public with regard to our charge, with regard to supporting dual language learners, regarding the outside influences to learning, the maximum opportunities that may occur outside of the classroom, or at least are integrated with what goes on in the classroom in support of development and learning for the dual language learners. So that's the overall intent of this panel. We have some exciting differences than some of the other panels. First of all, one of our panelists is going to join us through the magic of technology. She is actually going to be in Florida. So when I introduce her, she will be presenting her information to us via the web. So that's a little different than what we've had today. And then also is a little different twist is one of our panelists, we'll introduce in a minute, has lost her voice. And she regrets losing her voice, but she's tough enough that she's here to actually make herself available to us. And I'll do the best I can to summarize some of the notes that she has prepared for her presentation. And let me tell you, she's tried, but she just can't get that voice to work. And I certainly have had that experience. And I'll certainly try to deal with that set of circumstances. Let me briefly introduce the panelists, and then we will begin to address issues that lead to understanding in a better fashion, more comprehensive fashion, the kinds of opportunities to learn that may reside outside the classroom but intersect with classroom and schooling. First of all, our colleague who will join us on the web, Dr. Alessandra Chisea. She is a school psychologist, Hillsborough County Schools in Florida. She will address best practices in the assessment of bilingual children and support services that she provides, including crisis intervention and outreach services for the schools. So she's someone many of us know operates in schools and can give us that perspective. To my immediate left is Ana Hadid Gomez, Program Supervisor for the Family Enrichment Program at the Children's Bureau of Southern California. And she's going to address the program of Children's Bureau, particularly the Family Enrichment Program at the Magnolia Family Place Center, where she works with bilingual children and their families. To her immediate left is Stella Oliveira, Director of Education at LA Best at the After School Enrichment Program. She will address some elements of the LA Best program, which provides opportunities for homework and other learning activities, enrichment activities that boost academic skills, and particularly focus on reading and math, along with other activities. And I will do the best I can to summarize that. She has a PowerPoint, and she is willing to take questions and write them out so that I can answer them. So thank you, Stella. Next to her is Janine Paulson, who is a school nurse. We all forget that children essentially need to be in good health, to have someone available to them when they don't have good health. And Janine works in the Empire Gardens Elementary School in San Jose, Unified School District, and she will speak to her experience working in essentially a very low-performing, low-income school with high proportion of Spanish bilingual students. Again, last but not least, Peggy Reinman, who is a consultant on the third way to the Montana Migrant Education Program. Many dual language learners throughout the United States are in migrant education programs. And Peggy will speak about the Montana Migrant Education Program identified as Count on Me, And that program essentially provides learning opportunities in math and other areas in farm worker circumstances, the cherry orchards, and other migrant camps in western Montana. So as you can see, we have a rich set of expertise available to us in this panel. And I would like, first of all, to begin with our colleague who is in Florida, and she has her PowerPoint available here for us to view. So Dr. Alessandra, if you could please go ahead and begin.
Good afternoon, everybody from Florida. So the pronunciation actually of my last name is Chiesa. It means church in Italian. And I'm originally from Mexico, but my family of origin is Italian, therefore the name. And I know that the focus is education, but I bring forward a kind of slightly different approach, which is assessing bilingual. So in the state of Florida, we refer to them as ELL students, English language learners. And we kind of have three different waves of Latino families coming to us, either the brand new migrants that have arrived a week ago, or the migrant parents that have arrived, and then the children are born in the United States, or then multi-generational families that have been in Florida for several years. So the slides I have are a slight reduced version of what I tend to present at conferences, and it's basically to school psychologists, but it's the philosophy I bring towards assessing bilingual children. If we could move to the next slide. So I'm going to try to make it as visual as possible, and the way I view assessment is kind of three-part approach. One is understanding the world the child lives in, how the world understands the child, and then the child themselves. So I'm trying to look at multidimensional information when I'm looking at bilingual students, and really what is interfering with their ability to make progress. Next slide, please. So this is the slide talking about kind of understanding the child's world, and so I'm looking at it from different perspectives because I don't just want to take the teacher's request, like, teachers that say, oh, far below grade level, and I know they're learning enabled, and I really want to understand more about what's going on with the child before I'm going to jump automatically to a label. So some of the things I'll be looking at are issues like family systems, school system, are there supports for ELL students, community systems, things like that. And within the family system, one of the things I really want to stress, I've been talking a lot about this lately, and maybe Janine, our school nurse, can talk to really the importance of getting a medical history. Oftentimes I'm finding that our children are having significant medical problems that the parents don't necessarily think to share with the school and have significant impact on their ability to progress in school. So I think that's one very important part about solving the puzzle about what's interfering with a child's learning. Can I get the next slide, please? So then in terms of getting information from the different people that work with families, again, a multi-dimensional approach, which is getting information from the parents up top, the teacher, of course, the school staff, and again, I stress this part because oftentimes in my school, if a child is being referred to me because there are concerns, I often talk to other folks that have contact with beyond the teacher. For example, I might ask our school secretary what they know about the family. For example, sometimes children get signed out from school very frequently. This is not something that would show a computer system. Our computer system usually records tardy arrivals or absences, but does not record if a child is being pulled out of school early frequently. For example, our school nurse has been able to share with me things that happen in the community, like maybe the family was a victim of a home fire, things like that that the family might not think to bring forth, but are important in understanding what's going on for the child. And then on the far left, the idea of also kind of getting an input from the child. What are they experiencing in their difficulties academically? And then if I could have my last slide. And this is where I'm looking at, okay, myself as a clinical psychologist and a school psychologist, what are going to be the areas I'm going to assess? And and they all sort of overlap. And I always stress the importance of starting with language. So if you see there's a circle that's marked language, and really understanding thoroughly language use for the child. What language do they prefer? What language do they speak with mom, with dad, with brother, with sister, with aunt that's living at home? Really breaking it down, and we in the state of Florida, or in Hillsborough County, tend to use the Wukok Munoz as one of our tools to look at language dominance. And then these are the other areas that I would assess as a school psychologist and child psychologist. I'd assess cognitive ability, so intelligence, academics, adaptive functioning, if that's indicated, especially if we're possibly looking at mental retardation, social emotional functioning, kind of how is the child doing in an emotional end, and then any other areas that are relevant to the referral question. So if the child has any memory deficits, any motor deficits. But the point I'm trying to make is that when we're looking at assessment of our ELL students, is really taking a multidimensional approach, getting a lot of different sources of information to be able to develop an understanding of why the student is struggling in school. So I think that kind of concludes the part of my approach to assessment. And I don't know if we move on or if you want to do questions now.
Thank you very much, Sandra. We'll come back to you with questions. You can stay online.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorry. I wanted to ask you to stay online in case there are questions later, so our colleagues may have the opportunity to have an answer. Okay. Now let me turn to somebody who's actually here. Haiti, would you talk a little bit about the Family Children's Bureau and family engagement? Sure. You can do that. You can go there. You have the PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anaide Gomez, and I don't have a PowerPoint, but I just don't want to be sitting down, right? Well, I'm here just to share a little bit about the program, Family Enrichment Program. My work is with parents, and I'm going to start by giving you an idea how do we start this program. It's not the same as Stella's program, which I believe this is just a program that is run by Children's Bureau. Well, I work with parents in the classroom. They come with the children twice a week, only for 2 hours. And the program is for children 0 to 5. The goal of the program is to support the families and to promote the 5 protective factors and also language and literacy. And the objective is to prepare these parents to go to the community and form groups with other parents. And the reason is because where I work, in the community where I work, there are not many early childhood programs or free programs. So we want the children to start to experience social connection with other children and language, and don't wait when they go to school, which is, when they are 4 or 5. So we start a very early age in the community. We have like 12 groups going on in different parts of the community. This is led by parents that at some point were in the Family Enrichment Program. We have a staff who provides support to these parents and the children, and we provide all they need. So we have partnership with different community workers and also places like libraries, churches, and LAUSD. They open their classrooms so our groups can be provided there for families, not just for parents, but for grandparents or anybody that is taking care of a child that is under 5. And how we do it is we provide trainings to these parents and teach them how to promote language and literacy at home and how to implement activities at home too. We provide books to them. We provide print and we provide trainings often. And children come to the groups, and they, you know, have like a routine activities, like in a classroom setting, just in a different setting. It happens outside the classroom. So when I say routines, it means like very similar to the classrooms. They come, they play, they do outdoor activities, they read, they have a snack time, and the goal is to promote language so the children can hear language, not just from other children, but also for, you know, their parents and whoever is around them. And so far, we have seen that our children who come to our program that do not speak English, you know, after 5 months, they start to develop English or Spanish, because we do have children that come to our program that do not speak maybe Spanish. But just by being exposed to other children who do, then they learn too. We work more with Hispanic, but we also have some Chinese, African American families that come to our program. And basically, the goal is to teach parents that there are resources in their community that they can use to help their children to succeed in school. I'm talking about the libraries. Sometimes parents don't even have a library card. So we start by doing that, connect them to the libraries and connect them with other resources in the community. Also, what we learned that sometimes we just see children in the classrooms and we observe them that they might not have language, but we don't see what's going on around that child. So we need to learn a little bit more about the families and look at the child inside the whole frame, not just looking why or he's not speaking English. So we look at the well-being of the families and try to provide support them to get anything that they need. And we have different partners in the city who help us to help these parents. And I think so it's pretty much about the program, but if you have questions, I will be happy to answer those questions.
Sorry, do we have Stella's PowerPoint available? This is Stella is the director of the LA Best after-school enrichment program. And what I'll try to do is just move through her slides. And she's promised to really wave at me if I'm doing something really horrible. But the idea is to support students outside of the classroom in a number of ways that would enhance the academic performance inside the classroom. I'm not sure exactly how long the program is going, but given these notes I have here, it's not a new program. It's been around for quite some time. Okay. All right. Quite some time. Oh, I can't quite read. I think the focus really is the notion that children need a safe place, responsible adults, acting in behalf of what might in fact be important in the schooling process, recognition of family and community aspects. In 1988, Tom Bradley airs a history of 5 to 12 in the city of Los Angeles. So it's in its 27th year. This is not a new program. So it's got a little years behind it and a little experience. 25,000 students is not a small number of students in the LA region. Mission, again, provide supervised school, after-school education, enrichment, and recreation programs. I think as I see her notes, it's not just after school. It's not just doing your homework. It is, in fact, an enrichment program intended to provide students with numerous activities that will tie into their academic performance in the school, in the classroom. So I think this is probably the greatest element. These are, I think, summary aspects of sort of the guiding principles of the program. So there is some notion that children can choose. Children are seen as individuals, so there's lots of individualization and activities also related to creating not only skills but values and relationships with peers and adults. I think that's a critical part of the program. Also, I guess the key thing here is listen to your clientele. Critical for this program. Let me see if I can move through this. See that? I think the issue again about positive relationships, fostering caring, supportive relationships is part of that. Meaningful youth participation. So they're involved in the program itself, making decisions, and recognition, I think, of engagement with communities in which they live. So the opportunities to give back. Is an interesting aspect, I think, of this program. And certainly the learning experiences themselves, opportunities for them to gain skills and knowledge. Inspire students to learn and achieve, give the kids tools to succeed, and a belief that they can essentially move forward. Motivation, key element seems to be of this program. The core elements, it is education support, including homework, literacy, mathematics, science, and social science, so essentially paying attention to what is going on in school, but then going beyond that in terms of enrichment, visual and performing arts, social skills, conflict resolution, technology, nutrition, and fitness. I think there's also a recognition of some recreation. So this is all a matter of more school-like activities in a different way, but also having to do with sports and recreation combined with field trips. This is, I think, an example of some kind of competition that you hold. Yeah, and so that this is a science competition, kind of like a science fair. This program expands on what goes on in the school, and this is one of those areas. Stella, with your permission, I think these are the core elements. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you think in your notes are the critical elements and some evaluation that was performed on this program. When asked the question, what are the sort of key elements that make this program go, make it work for children and their families, she responds that the LMS program hires within the community. So they do a really extensive recruitment of individuals who are living in that community. So it is a community-based program. I think the other element is offering learning experiences in an informal way, meaning that you don't do a formal assessment of achievement or grade kids, but essentially the learning opportunities are organized in a way that do impact the kinds of work that are going on, the kinds of learning that's going on in the classroom. Also, very particular emphasis on second language development and bilingual development support. So I think recognizing who the students are is critical in this case. I think she also points out that they want to particularly pay attention to the social emotional learning. So this is the relationship issue. And even though we talk about schools dealing with peer interaction and learning, this program in an informal after-school environment pays attention to the kind of social relationships, positive social relationships that are developed with students across the student domains, as well as with adults in the program. So relationships are important. She also points out a key element is the staff receives training on strategies, such as graphic organizers, think, pair, share, vocabulary development activities, and English language development for dual language learners. So there is this concern that language intersects with the kinds of activities that are going on and that promote the progress and development of language. I want to just quickly summarize both an internal and external evaluation. A external evaluation found that summer participants in the program that LA Best offers actually increased levels in at least half a grade, so that there is some indication that summer activities, expanded opportunities to learn in the manner that I've described, that Stella has described, seems to have some impact on academic learning. The participants were more likely to have higher English language, math, science, and history GPAs at middle school. So again, some evidence that expanded opportunity to learn in this kind of environment, in summer, after school, with the kind of elements that she has described, may have an impact or have an influence on academic performance. And more likely to outperform non-participants at the grade level. So a little bit of scientific control studies here. So you compare those kids who participated in the summer program versus those who did not. You see some differences in achievement scores. I think overall, what we've seen is not only, I want one more point. I just saw this, I think it's important, that you see less intersection with the juvenile justice system by participants in these programs. So, so that what we're seeing here is a more out-of-school opportunity to learn, but also develop the kind of social relationships that may be effective not only in school, but also outside of school with regard to their own participation in community and, quite frankly, staying out of the juvenile justice system, which is, as you know, not a good idea. So with that, let me close and thank Stella for being here, and she'll be available for questions after this session. Okay, good. I didn't mess that up. Thank you, Stella. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Our next panelist, Janine, if you could, please. I'm happy to have you participate.
So I'm Janine Paulson, and I am, do I have to push a button?
Yeah, it should be.
I'm Janine Paulson, and I'm a school nurse in a large district in San Jose that was chosen by Stanford University.
Please turn on your mic.
Okay. Am I on now? Okay.
Hello?
So I am a school nurse that was part of a project that Stanford University did in our district to see what one school nurse in a poor school could do compared to the usual half-time nurse in a poor school in San Jose Unified. This project was completed in 2012 and was able to show that we could do a lot. Our goal was to keep kids in the classroom and minimize their health problems. And we focused on asthma and chronic illness as our goal to do education and interventions. And then we also chose our regular screenings to be as high as they possibly could be in total completion, where they actually saw a doctor for glasses, actually saw a doctor for hearing problems, actually saw a dentist for dental problems. The findings after just 1 year were quite amazing, and they were able to see that this was going in the direction they thought it would go. They never had data to prove that we actually are able to lower health problems and keep kids in classrooms longer. Some of the data was in the form of just, are they in the classroom? It's just attendance. And they were in the classroom more of the time. Some of the data was test scores, and English test scores went up significantly. I think it was the STAR test back then. So, so this has driven our district in how we handle where we place nurses. And after 6 years of consistent data, they decided to have one nurse in one of the poorest schools. And sometimes there's one nurse in one of the other poorest schools, depending on funding. I happen to be picked as that nurse, so I've been doing this kind of work for longer than anyone else in our district. Some of the interesting things that have trended through as we've been doing our nursing this way is that about halfway through the study, suddenly we got this huge bolus of children that had developmental delays, and we were going, what's this all about? This is not in our data. We're not expecting this. And we found out that 5 years previous, medicine had figured out how to save babies at a much younger gestational age. So we were reaping the product of that. And so we've been dealing with that issue now for quite a while. And it's an interesting issue. I think it was coming to this conference that I started putting 2 to 2 together and saying, why do I have 5 kindergartners running around my campus and so few other schools in the district have this problem? We have kindergartners that will stand on tabletops and throw pencils at everyone, and so there has to be a reversed evacuation of the classroom. We have kindergartners that don't sit crisscross applesauce. They do push-ups and sit-ups, and when they're done with exercising in as quiet a way as they can, they go out the door and run around the campus and then try to elope. And I keep asking the other nurses, so don't you have these kindergartners? Don't you have these first graders? And they don't. So I was thinking, okay, I'm the English, this is my group of kids. Is it something to do with Spanish speaking? No. Is it something to do with the community? No. And I start drilling down, and what it has to do with is each of these kids have a doctor that is a private doctor doing Medi-Cal mill doctoring, which is get the poor people to come to me, give them minimal care, and get them out of here as fast as possible. So when we have a child with a developmental delay that's probably due to what the rest of our county is having, these doctors don't go through the proper referral process. These children have been seeing these doctors all through their early years, but the doctor will give them the number for county mental health. Well, the number for county mental health is, hello, this is county mental health. If you're having a life-threatening mental health problem, please call 911. Otherwise, you can press this button or this button, and it goes on like that. Well, a parent usually doesn't think they've dialed the right number. So I call county mental health, and I say, so were you ever intending for private parents to call this number? And they said, no, that's for practitioners only. They're supposed to call, get the family started. We weave them through the system, and then the family can get some help. So, you know, thank goodness for this little conference. Me and my boss were putting 2 and 2 together and saying, why do we have this problem? And really, we just started discovering the reason we have this problem right before the conference. So now we're stuck with what to do next. But there are other trends that that come through. Let's see here. I see parents speaking languages other than Spanish that have problems with their doctors. They don't understand their doctors. And then I find out there's something going on with their health, and it becomes a detective situation and a mystery. I had this one case where the parent told me the child was on a medication that's for kidney transplant, keep them from rejecting kidneys and livers. And so I brought them in, and we were trying to understand one another, got a counselor and a translator, but still couldn't understand one another. And all I said, well, until we hear from the doctor, I'm going to have to ask that your child goes home if there's a case of chickenpox, because he's very immunosuppressed being on this medication. Well, it turns out the doctor is one of these Medi-Cal-Mill doctors, and the doctor doesn't like to get back to us. We also have problems with these doctors not respecting the state mandates for immunizations, where we have to comply or the child is excluded. And we've had to exclude children because doctors have said, no, I declare that this is okay. He has enough immunizations. Well, this doesn't line up with state mandate. So, doctors can sometimes be the reason a child is excluded from school. And working with that situation is another problem we have. There is true disparity of care when it comes to socioeconomic low end of society. And these children do have that problem. The other problem that seems to run through this whole area is mental health problems. So as we were doing this study, and my boss was bragging about the results to all the principals, this mental health issue, that the nurses were actually helping with mental health throughout this program, and principals were very happy about this. Kind of got a few principals really excited who had mental health problems in their schools, and they started saying, well, maybe I can afford a nurse. Maybe I could kick in my little Title I money and have a full-time nurse. And then I got pulled away for doing that work one year with another school. And that is indeed a good part of my job. A principal views me as one of the team when I'm there all the time. I'm part of the crisis team. I've taken trainings on how to restrain a child and how to help a situation that's a crisis. And I think when you just think about it, if you're learning a foreign language, I don't know how many of you have, there are times where it's very frustrating. You want to be part of the community. You want to connect. You want people to understand you. And I think that brings out low-level mental health problems of stress and slight depression, of anxiety. I have a whole arsenal of little tricks to help out with these things. So, in conclusion, I would like to see way more nurses in schools helping out with these kind of problems. We have to bring up the standards. There should not be disparity of care to the point that it is. And I think if we can eliminate some of these disparities, we can have much more success in this area. I did have the unusual experience of working as a nurse 1 year in the midst of all this work in the school that had all the English learners in Cupertino, California, that has no economic problem. And it was like night and day. They really don't have much work to do with keeping kids well. It was all about learning, though there was some mental health issues. It didn't interfere with learning.
Thank you very much. Peggy will join us, talk a little bit about the migrant program that she's involved in.
Now, I see, I'm waiting for my picture to come up there, for starters. There, okay. I thought it would be nice to end with a slightly more visual image of what learning can look like for dual language learners. So, and also I realized as I was listening that I want to use these slides to illustrate some themes I'd like to bring to the attention of the committee of alternative ways of thinking about the actual education process, particularly when you're outside of the traditional classroom. And as you can see, you can't get a lot more outside of the traditional classroom than this. This is a program that is sponsored by Migrant Education in Montana. Migrant Education has a kind of history of going to where our families are rather than asking them to come to us. And I think this is probably the most extreme example of this. This project takes place in the orchards of western Montana. It takes place, we literally take blankets out into the orchards where we, now let me see if I can change to the next slide. I'll push something and get it. Can you tell me which one to push? Get it to you? Aha. Nope. Can you change it manually up there, please? There. Oh. Can we go back to the one that was just on there, please? Nope. Wrong direction. There. The math program takes place on blankets in a series of about 25 different orchards scattered up and down a lake in western Montana. We send tutors out in the late afternoon to collect children and meet on the blankets. The parents, the families are camped right around where we are. Originally, we started this program thinking we were going to target children in about kindergarten through about 5th grade. And I kept being told, this is your target group, you have to work with them. Our problem was that everybody came. So we really didn't, again, could we have the next slide, please? And in this case, yes, these are all, everybody came, the teenagers started coming, and if there's one thing that we all know as educators, if teenagers come to you and say, please teach us math, you don't say, no, go away, we're not supposed to work with you. So over the years, we've collected everybody from the slide before, which was a grandmother who we had known, who came back year after year and plopped herself down and began working with us also, to, you see on the right, children who are elementary school age. Here we're going up into middle school. So we have, and when we started using money, let me tell you, that was then we not only got the teenagers, but fathers came and sat around, collected, sat in chairs and watched us and began to talk about money. I thought to myself, well, yeah, this makes sense. This is a community for whom money this is very important, of course. But I've since found out, working in a lot of other communities, that American children just like to play games that involve money. Can we have the next slide, please? Yes. Now, one of the points I'd like to make about this program is that it's an academic program. We see our task, and I take this task particularly seriously, working with this community of children. There are not only all of the linguistic needs for these children, but there are also, particularly in math, they go through school only half understanding, and they really don't get certain kinds of fundamental math concepts. And math, as we all know, is a language that it's very hard to learn and understand and think in if it's not your, what I like to call, mother tongue. So this is a dual language program. Our tutors work in both languages, and in a minute I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that particular aspect, the teaching aspect of it. But we have, over the years, picked out about 10 to 12 target mathematical skills that we use games to have children practice during this period of time. One of them, as you can probably tell from right here, is being able to rapidly construct 10. And we only have these children for somewhere between, sometimes we only get them for a couple of sessions, sometimes we get them up to 10 sessions. What we try and do is identify one or two particular math skills which a short amount of practice will really move them forward in, and then we practice it. Of course, part of the challenge of a program like this is that we're out camping. We're camping probably by a lake that's probably one of the best swimming places in this whole country. We have had math sessions where tutors came in and said, gee, I really couldn't finish the session, there was a bear in the tree. And so there's a lot of distraction. And there's nothing that's going to force the children to come to the blankets. It's a choice. So we had to make it, but we wanted to do serious academics. Perhaps we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. And I think what you'll notice over the course of this next a few slides, or from the beginning, is the kind of level of engagement of the children. This kind of very deeply focused attention, and they're enjoying what they're doing. They're also really focused in on it. They're in what I call a learning frame of mind, which, again, there's a lot of research that literally talks about what the chemical composition is of the brain if a learner is, on the one hand, not anxious, but on the other hand, fully engaged and focused, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute a little more, has this kind of whole body involvement in what's going on there. You look at the eyes, look at the hands, look at the materials. Math in this particular context, in the context of these games, is not, it's not theoretical. There's very little work on paper. We've started using whiteboards with the older kids, because the older kids come to us and say, I don't understand order of operations. So we created a series of games where you could practice order of operations, but then we also needed to write it down because we were thinking a lot about the transition between math in the orchards and math in the classroom, and we wanted to facilitate that in a certain way, which meant somehow representing it. But our first step is always these physical models of mathematical thought. Maybe I don't know if I can switch this, but could we have the next one, please? That's the curriculum. On the right, you see what a board game that was created that's called the Flathead Lake Monster, because we're swimming in a lake that's 300 feet deep, so we're all thinking about monsters for sure. There is some really interesting research I found after we'd started this program that said that if you take children and you have a board game like that, and you have them practice out loud, not just counting the numbers one by one, but if they roll a 6 and they're on 6 and then they roll a 3 and they have to go 3 more, instead of saying 1, 2, 3, they have to say 7, 8, 9, and they have to do it out loud at the same time as they're moving their hands, that up to 3 months later, they find significant improvement in understanding of magnitude, of the relative size of numbers, and of how to construct numbers. And the language component of what we're doing here is very important. This is when I wanted to just talk to you very briefly about the methods. It's been really fascinating for me being here today, and we're all talking about language. And I'd like to kind of bring up a little bit the subject of not the child's language, but the teacher's language. Because we very carefully train our teachers, and in a minute I'll show you a picture. They're tutors. They're mainly college students. We look for bilingual. We started with almost all Anglo because we've kind of become known in Montana, which after all does not have a very large Spanish-speaking population. But this year we were almost half native Spanish speakers, which I felt was a great accomplishment on our part. But the training of the language of the teachers is a method that we call the language bath. We teach teachers how to teach math without asking children any questions. That means literally when you roll a couple of dice, you do not say to the child, how much is that? and you don't say, no questions. That's a very difficult and a kind of shift in the whole way in which children think. I've seen, and we often say to children, come to this program, there's no tests, there's no questions, and when they sit down, we're not going to ask you questions. I've literally seen children's shoulders drop. What we do say to children then is begin to, and I direct your attention to the fingers, to the pointing, a process called pointing and naming, where we teach staff how to use their fingers to direct the child's attention to a specific part of these, what are basically mathematical models of a certain kind of thought, abstract thought, and then link that to sometimes English, sometimes Spanish, sometimes a combination of both, depending on what language the child herself is comfortable in, and begin to model that kind of language over and over again. Oh, look at that. I rolled a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What I found is that if you do that about 3 times with children, the first time they won't say anything. The second time they may count in Spanish. By the 4th time, they will start counting in English. It's what they want to be able to do, but they need to be given that kind of breathing space to feel comfortable the way a very young child does, to hear the language spoken over and over again with lots of physical clues to what's going on, and then they will begin to use it themselves. And we use that model with everything from this to, as I said, games for high school students which involve algebra. The high school students came to us and said, I never really understood the difference between sum, product, and difference. What did they mean? So we created a whole series of dice games with cards where you turned them over and you said, oh, I have to do the sum. And then we watch the children, and if they cannot right away say what sum is, then the teacher says, okay, let's add. So we're kind of building language skills in that way, using a combination, as I said, of that language bath, of very clear mathematical models, of not asking any questions, and then creating what's basically a very fun environment. Can I have the next one, please? Okay, now, assessment. We're a federally funded program. We have to do assessment. We found a way to make assessment, in fact, be a very useful tool in a program where we have groups of young people going out into orchards. We need to keep track of things. We need our teachers to become skillful. I thought the last conversation was very interesting, and I'd like to just briefly talk about the process of assessment where you use very carefully defined observation in order to be able to see where children are when they first come, because we're only going to have them maybe 4 or 5 times. We need to know right away where to start with them, and also how far we can take them in a short period of time. We have two kinds of assessment we do. One is basic arithmetic skills. For example, for adding 10, the difference between if a child rolls a dice and he looks at it, and then after a while he starts counting from 1, or he starts doing what mathematics teachers call counting on, which is he starts from 6 and then goes 7, 8, 9, 10, or he says 10, or he says, oh, that's 10. Those are very 4 different kinds of behaviors, and you can identify them. We also, the top shows you 4 number thinking skills that you assess children in their skills through observation. And then the bottom and I chose the one that had to do with language because that's what we're talking about here. The bottom shows you 4 different kinds of behaviors that we associate with a level of comfort in doing in mathematical thinking and mathematical language that somehow give tutors a way to quickly assess a child and place them at a certain level, work with them for a while, and they also, speaking of the whole level of assessment, if you see that you can see where a child's at, and then you know what the next level is, where you would like to bring that child to during that period of time. Can I have the next one, please? Okay, that shows you our tutors doing their assessment. They bring it back, we talk about it. The next one, please. That's just to sort of say, yes, whole body math, right? And the final one, the last one, please, is the big picture. So this is a picture of a program where, sort of to throw out the idea that in these very alternative settings, it's possible to do very serious academic work and to try out new ways of teaching and learning and to help children achieve real progress and to work with children of every age in this kind of unusual context. And above all, to have a wonderful time, which we certainly have.
Appreciate that. What I'm going to ask just one key question to you all, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. Of all the things you've described, particularly keeping in mind dual language learners, children and students, and their families and communities, what are the key elements that really provide the maximum service in your programs and in your efforts? What are the key elements? You gave us some, Stella, so I'm going to let you pass on this one because you addressed that. But if you could, Haiti, what in all that you do, what are the key things you do that really are so important that you would never give them away?
I would say just the well-being of the families for us, just knowing the families, I think is a key element for the program because in order for the children to learn or to be in a home or environment that is rich in language, we had to pay attention to the families. We had to know them and see how they're doing.
Thank you. Alessandra, are you there? Maybe she's not there. Okay. Alessandra?
Yes, I am.
Can you
hear me?
Can you answer that question? What are the key elements in providing the service you do that certainly cannot...
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can you hear my question? Which is, what are the key elements in providing the service that you do that you would not give away, that are so critical you would not give away?
I would say getting to know each student personally. So rather than it being a process of just going through the motions, it's more about getting to know the student in a personal manner as well as their family.
Okay. I hear family's coming up important around here. All right. Can I ask our nurse to weigh in?
Well, I think probably the same answer is that I'm there all the time. I'm a trusted adult. I'm one of the children's support systems and one of the family support systems. And if you're not there all the time, you can't fit into that. So there are relationships that develop and support the families that'll never happen unless you have your body there.
Okay. Thank you. Peggy?
I would say it's being able to create a learning situation in which the child feels completely unstressed and is able to master material. And I remember one little boy who came back and said, well, we said, how come you did so much better this year in school? And he said, well, after last year, I decided to be smart. So where children can feel smart and capable in learning academic material.
Very good. Well, thank you for your response to my question. Now let's try to open this up to committee members. If there are any committee members that have a question, please move towards the microphone. Arturo, please.
There we go. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for all of the presentations. They were really, really interesting. I have a burning question to ask, and the burning question is about math, although I know this is a panel on dual language learning. But I sort of had the question for Peggy about whether some of the students that went through this more embodied version of math actually did better than students in traditional classrooms?
In the context of this, I don't think it's one or the other, first of all. I think they're mutually supportive, and in the best classrooms, they are mutually supportive, so that you do this, you also do more traditional work, and you also, the idea of practice in math, how to turn practice into something where there's full engagement rather than rote practice is a question for every math teacher. These particular children, we have not been able to, they all go back to the Washington State school system. We exchange information with the Washington State school system, but the level of data collection in the world kind of means that we are not able to follow child by child their test scores. What we have seen is that it takes after about 4 sessions of working on a specific skill, you can see often, probably in about 60% of the time, you will see that child moving a level in mastery of that skill. That we have documented pretty carefully, because we do a pre and post assessment for these specific arithmetic skills at every level. Ideally in a classroom, and I think there are many classrooms like that, there's the integration of this kind of math with more written math, and a kind of cross-pollination of both of those methods for teaching math, particularly for dual language learners, where they need something that gives meaning to the symbols that they're having to write and the things that people are saying to them.
But I like the idea of math being fun. I seem to be the only one in my family who think that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
That's including parents and children.
Yeah, well, we have had a lot of parents come around, and after a while, parents begin to say, yes, this is interesting. But I was saying earlier, which I really believe is true, I know is true, that it just so happens that particularly in the Latino community, my experience has been that parents who were educated in Mexico have pretty good number sense. It's a better system than ours for educating people who've had only 3 or 4 years of elementary school. Often are as good as our high school students and high school graduates in basic mathematical operations, which means they're a great resource for teaching their children.
And I had the same experience. I went to an elementary school in Oakland, California that was 95% Mexican American, and the kids that came in like in 4th grade that were immigrants, they would just blow everybody out of the water. They were so good. I one last thought about that. I'm in Germany for a year, and I have had all this experience with milliliters, and nobody knows what a cup or a pint or anything is, but it seems to me that you naturally multiply by tens when you deal with a metric system, and I wonder if this really convoluted system is just ruining our ability to count by tens. But that's just a thought, and we can talk more about that afterwards. But I wonder if that's not just natural counting by tens, which you would do in Mexico as well, because they have a metric system.
Yeah.
I had a question for Janine, I guess a comment about that. It was very powerful what you said. I would assume that there would be lawyers or federal agents or somebody lining up to shut these doctors down. So I'm wondering why that's not happening.
Yeah, well, something's going to happen. I mean, I just talked to my boss for the first time about it yesterday, and I said, can I share that? We've never talked about it, but, oh, my mic's not on, so I'm not talking into it, sorry. Yeah, really, this is brand new kind of revelation, yeah, but it all adds up. So she and I said, we've got work to do. I don't know where we're going to begin, but we got to do something about this. So, I mean, I could just spend a lot of time writing to the Board of Doctors, licensures, but I think, we could start with our health officer in our county, because the immunizations is just absolutely outrageous. And I think she might take that one on. So, and then we have a medical society that could be, help us. So yeah, I think it's just budding. This is a budding thing that we just figured out.
So question? Please. It's voice actor.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, I'm Dylan. Thank you so much for coming. And Peggy, I think we all want to be in the whole body picnic table math in the orchards program. And you alluded a little bit to this, it sounded like a lack of coordination between the Migrant Education program and the school system. And I wanted the rest of the panelists, and even you, Janine, maybe to comment on how you connect in with the school system, and maybe for Janine, how you connect in with the early childhood programs to the extent that you do, when that works and how it works, making those connections.
Can I just make a correction here? I didn't mean to imply what I did imply. Migrant Education works very closely with school districts. All of the children, for example, who were enrolled by us in Montana, Washington Department of Education and their home schools get records of the fact that they were enrolled with us. And that's true throughout the country, that there's this very close coordination between and a very serious, thoughtful attempt over many years to work with schools to track children from state to state. The problem is kind of the long-term one of tracking individual children year by year, which is huge, rather than passing information back and forth, because that happens a lot. And we are in touch if we identify a child who we feel either belongs in a gifted program or needs a certain kind of support, we will go and then contact the home school for the child. And I didn't mean to give the impression that the two were not working together in a certain way.
Yes, for the early childhood program, this is how we do it in Children's Bureau. We do have a staff that's part of her job. So she will visit school, she will connect with the principal, teachers, and talk about the program. And often we invite directors from the school to come to our program for the preschool children, so they can explain about the program and also connect parents to the schools, because sometimes there is that wall between parents and schools, and we want to build that trust before the children go to the school.
Good. Let me see if there are any questions. Maria, please. Mm-hmm.
Sure. I hate to do this to Stella, but I'm going to go ahead and ask her a question. You said that you asked the children in your programs also what they wanted, but you didn't tell us. What do the children in these programs want?
I got you a text thing. While we're waiting for that, do we have any questions from the web participants? No? No, okay. While she's writing, Kevin, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Okay. Oh, thank you. Well, it was a very informative presentation. I have a question for Janine. It's very interesting that you pointed out, or you alluded to the possible high prevalence of mental health issues among the English learners in your school. And a lot of scholars are concerned, or increasingly getting concerned about the classification of dual learners as special needs. Does that information that you notice in your school, does it get fed into the system that's used to classify those kids, or are the observations that you make the same kinds of observations that whoever is classifying those kids might be misleading or misinterpreted?
Mm-hmm. So, in order to get mental health as a diagnosis, takes so much work in elementary school. The behaviors have to be so extreme No one wants to medicate a child with those kind of medications. So we have an emotionally disturbed class for elementary school children, but that kind of mental health is, like, it's a spectrum. You know, that is way out here. The things we see with the English learners are more in here. They're frustration, stress, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, things that most of us have in our own lives, but they have a little bit more of it. And if you are of a lower socioeconomic level, in our area, rent's gone up 30%. So people are living in smaller places. We have 8 people in a 1-bedroom house, and we have large families of 12 children and 10 children in small environments. So sleep, you know, will affect mental health. You see maybe more gateway type diagnosis symptoms. We don't know if they're truly the diagnosis of ADHD, but wouldn't anybody kind of look a little bit like they were bored if they didn't understand and they were, you know, learning a new language? So those kind of behaviors do affect the classroom when you get enough of them, and it distracts other children and it's hard to learn. So, but there are more of those behaviors in these schools.
Stella, how you doing with that answer? All right, good. She's working on it. She's working on your answer, Mike. Okay. Any questions from the public, first of all? All right. Then we have, did I see a hand? Yes, please. There's a public member. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, kid.
Just an observation. I'm Angela Bransball from the Montana Office of Public Instruction. It's been my privilege to work in the program Peggy was describing. Just 2 observations. While a lot of federal dollars have gone towards developing systems to exchange information, assessment information on migrant children, unfortunately, the discrete kind of information that we need to really inform instruction is not readily available to the teachers in situations where the children are very, very mobile. In other words, we might know that a child is not proficient in English. We might get that information regarding how they've done, how they've performed in Washington State. We might find that they're failing math, their math assessment, their state assessment, but that's the extent of the information we get, and it isn't quite discrete enough to inform instruction. So the important part of Count on Me math for dual language learners especially is the fact that we teach tutors, we teach this cadre of folks to be able to observe the information about how the child is learning and where they're at. And so that's really, I think, very important to note. The other thing is a stressor psychologically that probably Dr. Chiesa and Janine would be interested in, and that is often these children, if they're from immigrant families, are one of the reasons we had to go to them in the orchards is for them to go to school is a giant leap. To take the bus to go to a site-based program, for their parents may be gone in a raid when they come back, and that's just a little bit too stressful for them to actually engage in learning. So that's another psychological kind of impact on learning that they have. Thanks.
Are we there? Yep, she's editing. I'll do the best I can. Yeah. The answer to the question. What do the children say? They want to have fun, first of all. Some are interested in sports. Some are interested in leadership roles. Those are kind of interesting. So we also try to have disguised learning, which we do not have hands-on programs. We do have hands-on programs, sorry. Also have to give staff the freedom to survey the students, so again, continue to ask, on what they would like to learn or do. For example, we had students interested in nail polish. As a result, they began to experiment with different colors different types. In the end, a science experiment was created. So starting with the students' children's interests. Children who want to connect with community members to learn about what they do. So some interest in what actually goes on in their community is another interest. Most of the time, offer them an experience which, from the students, begin to inquire and discover through trial and error. So it sounds like you're giving students a more opportunity to try things and fail sometimes, okay? It seems that, pointing out here that children also have to read to and ask about following these activities. So there is some literacy activities engaged in what the children choose to do. So there seems to be some interest in doing that. Is that fair? Okay, very good. Diane, do you have a question?
It's a question for Stella, but it's not going to take you a long time to write the answer. First of all, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it. So it has to do with where the funding comes from for your program. It's been in place for a long time, and it sounds like it's probably substantial. And it's really making a difference. So, and how you've managed over time to sort of keep that funding.
We'll work on that. Kinji, you had a question. Yes,
yeah.
please.
So this is for Alessandra Chiesa and others too, possibly. But I'm just thinking. I keep hearing about the shortage of clinically trained psychologists who are bilingual or understand language issues. And so, you know, how many of you are there? And what is the clinical training profession doing to have more, you know, clinically trained psychologists who are linguistically sensitive or bilingual?
And we'll wait a minute. It looks like there's a time transmission, so you'll...
I would love to answer that question. So I come myself from a very mixed background, Spanish being my first language, Italian my second language, and English my third language. So I'm very sensitive to learning languages and what that process is like. But in terms of the training, when I went through my clinical psychology program, I had to actively seek out bilingual supervisors and had to create some of those experiences for myself. But in New York, there are 3 universities that graduate bilingual school psychologists, not necessarily only English, Spanish, but other languages as well, and they have to take the exam that translators would have to take in order to be certified as a translator, interpreter-translator. And there's a similar program starting in Texas as well. But that I know of, there are 5 graduate programs for school psychology in the United States. That are graduating bilingual school psychologists that are actually certified bilingual school psychologists. And I apologize for that delay in my responses, but there is a problem with the transmission process.
That's okay, Alessandra. We did get it. We did get it. So thank you very much for your patience. And we have another answer. It seems like the program has a multi-funding source. One of our staff is a full-time grant writer. You've heard that before, okay? We have federal, state, city, and private donors as well. So funding is very diverse. We're a nonprofit organization. They do have a governing board, and Best Friend's primary role is to raise funds. So some of us sit on those boards. So for example, there are lots of cultivation partnerships with regard to, again, a nonprofit. Those of you who know about the nonprofit world, partnerships and ways in which one secures that funding is sometimes very difficult, but can be done by reaching out to others who are doing similar or allied work. Do we have any other questions from the committee or from those who are visiting us today, the public session? Any more? Okay. Could I ask maybe each of you just to take a minute or two? Stella, I won't ask you, but the rest of you to just take a minute or two to maybe, given your participation today, just sort of summarize your thinking, given the task we were given today. Think about families, students, and support for those folks. I'm going to start at the other end. So, Maggie, would you begin?
Now, let me see if this is on. For me, it's been very interesting to hear people speak repeatedly about two themes that are extremely interesting to me. One is the integration of language with thought, and how important that is all the way through a child's development. And my own particular interest has been, as I've said, not only in the child's language, but the way in which the person who's instructing the child uses her own language to cultivate that, which leads to the second one, which I've heard over and over again today, and it's sort of a meeting of mind, that the emotional state of the learner, the context in which we're trying to work with the child, as someone said here, the personal relationships, that's the bottom line. And if you don't have that and a kind of link with the child, not just as a body in your classroom, but as part of a community, you don't have anything. And it's just been kind of encouraging to me to find out that there's many, many people in many ways thinking about that, and that we're all thinking about it and realizing how very important, well, for that matter, second language learner, any child, I should think, really, we're talking about how a person becomes educated and how a person learns. And I think maybe that's one thing I'd like to say. It seems to me that everything we've been talking about today applies to every child. Maybe more intensely to children who have the extra, who both have to deal with language and often poverty. But really, we're talking about the state of education, I think.
Very good. Janine, any final words?
Well, I think the older I get and the more experience I get as a human being, the more I see what makes people happy is having relationships. And language is relationships. And we can't have a next generation without solving some of these problems. I'd like to leave that legacy, that we solved this problem. That would be awesome.
Thank you. Heidi, I'll go to you.
Well, I was just thinking right now about how the stressors seems not to affect families, but also students and how they carry those into the classrooms. And for me, that's just my experience with the families and how children reflect what is going on at home too. So I think so we just need funding. That's a big thing. Like in our program, the program is just private money because there is no money, and so hopefully, we can get more fundings in communities, like especially with poor people lives, and so that's my final wish.
Good. Alessandra, I know you're still on. You have any final words? We'll put up with the delay.
Okay. I would say that I'd really like to see, obviously, more training programs for our bilingual families coming in. Oftentimes, if I meet a parent who's bilingual, I'm trying to recruit them to come work for the school. Be it in the cafeteria or a bilingual aide in the classroom. But I think the more we have our bilingual staff or our bilingual families working in the school, the better opportunities for relationships with the other families and the children.
Very good. Now, believe it or not, the person with the last words is the one who didn't utter one at all this afternoon. Stella has asked me to at least say a couple things. One, if we show care, children blossom. So I think the relationship issue, the caring issue, and a proverb, golden proverb, education is like a garden, we have to cultivate it. Nice way to end this. We're right on time on ending. Thank you all, and certainly thanks especially to our colleague joining us from Florida. Thank you so much, and Stella, thanks for bearing with us, and for all the panelists, thank you for your participation in helping the committee in its work. Thank you very much. If you have any comments.
Well, it's been a long day, and it's truly impossible to say anything more than what has been expressed by our panelists. As some of you may remember from our last public session in Washington, I was so overcome by the youth panel, I started to weep. But I'm not weeping this time. So first of all, what I want to do is to thank the staff who made this panel and all of the other 3 panels before them such a splendid learning experience for everyone. So I would like to especially thank Sheila Motes, as well as who really labors enormously to put these panels together, contact the people, identify the people. And Suzanne, Suzanne, our fearless study director, and Rebecca. And of course, last but not least is Anna Lee. And I don't know if Anna Lee is around, but really, I mean, if we want to talk about a high level of stressors, I think Anna Lee will definitely win that round. But I really, I can't see you very well because this light is directly in my face, but I really want to thank you for your attention to the details. I know it's not an easy thing to do. So I would just like to make a few comments, and I won't take a long time, I promise. You know, I've been thinking throughout the whole day, what are the key points? What are the key leverage points for us as this committee to make a difference in the educational outcomes for dual language learners? And, you know, the 4 panels that the committee and Sheila organized, I think talked, at least to me, to some of the more structural policy and organizational factors. Certainly supporting parents and their advocacy is very important. Building the professional capacity of educators, whether it's through teacher, principal, superintendent preparation, recruitment, and professional development. Those are all very important. And then today we heard about all of the out-of-school support, such as the healthcare system, the after-school programs, the programs that support families, programs that support children who are not in traditional educational settings. I think all of those things are really, really important. But I keep sort of kind of searching for, is this all? Will these, what shall I say, policies or structures or organizational forms make a difference in terms of children really being very well educated and being able to do all of the things that we would like them to do in the future? And so it really brings me to this point or theme that I've been thinking about, which I think is really reflected in many of the comments of our last panel, is I really do think that our image, our concept, our idea of the learner, of the child, as a learner, is really central to the effective education of all children. We can have all of these things in place, but if we don't think of the learner as being someone who is an active learner versus a passive learner, or a person who brings cultural experiences, family experiences, in many cases experiences of concentrated disadvantage for dual language learners. If we don't take into account the nature of the social and relationships between children and those who are educating them, I don't think we're going to make very much of a difference. And one of the images that I had was, I was an undergraduate and I was involved in some of the first experimental studies of attachment with Eleanor Maccabee. And I think the thing that I really took away from those studies is that the reason why attachment, in this case between children and parents, were so important is that those children who had a strong, secure attachment with their parents were the ones that were able to explore, be curious, be secure in themselves, and these were really very young children. And so the whole notion that a relationship, not only with a mother, but could be with a father or teacher or whatever, is the fundamental basis for learning and curiosity, I think is something we really need to take into account. So I really want to thank everybody, and we really have a huge task in our committee report, but this has been a really productive day, and I really thank everyone. Thank you.